So today on Crafters Grove, we're going to show you how to put in your homemade shelving into a closet. This is the den closet that I was telling you about in our last video, and because we want this mainly as storage, we want to get in as many shelves as possible. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is calculate your measurements for the shelves. So measure the width and depth of your closet and make sure you take into account whether you want to leave space between your shelves and the edge of the closet. So essentially the width of your shelf should be the same as the width of the closet, and the depth is the depth of the closet minus any space you want to leave open between the end of the shelf and the end of the closet. So our shelves ended up being on the left side 17 by 30 inches and on the right side 21 by 30 inches. To figure out how many shelves we needed for the closet, first we had to figure out whether we wanted equal spacing between the shelves. Because we wanted equal spacing, it actually makes the calculation a little bit easier. Next, we figured out what is the biggest object we wanted to fit into these shelves and measured that. That plus about an inch became our shelf height measurement. We then took the total height of the closet and divided by our total shelf height measurement, and that gave us exactly how many shelves we needed. So because we went for different heights on the left versus the right hand side of the closet, that resulted in 5 shelves on the left, 6 on the right. So once you know your shelf measurements, you also need to know your measurements for the plywood. We went with a 4 by 8 foot sheet of plywood, which works out to 96 by 48 inches. Knowing both your shelf measurements and your plywood measurements, you can now start planning out how you're going to make your cuts. This is going to help minimize your cost and waste when doing cuts in the plywood. So given all those measurements, the best way to minimize the amount of waste was to place the smaller sheets horizontally like you see and the bigger sheets vertically, and then we only had 1 inch of waste down below. And that resulted with only that 1 inch remaining at the bottom being unusable in this project, and the rest of the waste in green, which actually wasn't waste, we used to cut the wall-mounted support pieces from. This also meant we needed a second piece of plywood to get the remaining shelves cut. So you can see how we laid out the shelves on this piece of plywood. We were able to cut out the remaining support pieces and then had a huge chunk of plywood left over that we can use in a future project. So I've also laid out the measurements for our wall-mounted support pieces here. On the left side, we needed 5 of the back pieces because there were 5 shelves. And likewise, we needed 6 pieces on the right side for the back. And then you needed to double for the side pieces as you needed them both on the left and the right. And then we cut those at a 45-degree angle so that there isn't any sharp angles to catch items as you're sliding them into the shelves. So here I've laid out the cut pieces for one side of the closet, and we used 5/8 inch thick maple plywood for this project. In retrospect, 3/4 inch plywood actually would have been a better choice for this project. It will support much heavier weight and also decrease the risk of warping of the wood over time. So to begin the install, you want to mark on the back wall the total height of your shelf minus the height of the support pieces, and that's where you're going to lay the first back support piece. After you've inserted the support piece with 1 screw, you should level it off using a level to ensure your shelves are level overall, and then you can finish screwing in the remaining screws into, and this is very important, into some studs so that they're properly supported. We then continued by mounting every back piece into the back wall, and then followed by putting the side support pieces. These you need to both line up with the back pieces, but also make sure they're level before screwing them into place. Again, screwing into studs so that the shelves are properly supported for the heavy weighted items you're likely going to be placing on your shelves. So once all your support pieces are in place, you can start fitting the shelves into their spaces. So this is a really important step of the project because, as you see, Stephen and I found out that not all the shelves are fitting correctly into their spaces. So by doing this quick fit test, this allowed us to make cut adjustments to make sure that the shelves fit precisely into their spaces. So completing these cut adjustments was simply by remeasuring the space where the shelf didn't fit and then marking the changes that we needed to make on the sheets of plywood that you can see Stephen doing now. And then after that, we cut off those marked pieces. So once your shelves are fitting properly, you could just stop there and call the project finished. But what we decided was to apply some veneer to the front of the shelves, which really helped to finish off the piece and make it look a lot more aesthetically pleasing, a lot more beautiful. So here we've cut to length a piece of veneer. So the great thing about this veneer that we purchased is that the adhesive is already on it. All you need to do is apply heat to activate that adhesive and glue the veneer to the front of the wood. This video has been sped up, so you do need to spend quite a bit of time with the iron applying the heat to ensure that the adhesive has been activated and that the veneer is fully glued down to the wood. After you're done applying the heat and you feel that the adhesive has been activated, what we did is applied pressure, even pressure throughout the piece using a scrap piece of wood. We did this for about 30 seconds. Again, the video is sped up, and now you can see that the veneer is completely adhered to the front of the shelf. So securing the shelf back into place using whatever clamping system you want to use, this is the system that we came up with, you then have to cut the excess veneer so that it lines up with the shelf so you don't have that veneer sticking out. It's not only unsightly, it's going to chip over time and actually cause quite a lot of splinters and things like that. So Stephen did pick up this little device, which took a little bit of practice to get proper cuts without scoring the wood. That just helped to cut the sides of the veneer in line with the piece. After doing that, you are going to want to sand. You can sand out the groove that the little device created, but also sanding the edges a little bit to give a very subtle rounded edge that really again helps to finish off the piece and give it a nice finish off feel. Oh, we touched hands. Okay, so next you want to go to trim off the outer edges of the veneer. Stephen did that using an X-Acto knife. Just be very careful. This is a great opportunity for you to cut yourself, so just be mindful. And I did find that cutting against the piece in the way, in the direction that Stephen's doing, rather than pulling up with the X-Acto knife, just helped to keep that veneer sticking down to the piece. Otherwise it lifted it up and and you'd have to seal it again onto the wood. And then finish off with a little bit of sanding, rounding off those edges again, just like you did for the front of the shelf. So with the veneer and the final sanding, the piece felt really smooth and soft and really had a nice finished look. So let's compare the two options of veneer versus no veneer. I definitely have a favorite, but I'll let you decide whether the veneer step is worth it for you. Time for Crafter's Grove tip of the week. Ting! So as I mentioned, we got the plywood cut at the hardware store. So I do not knock this step at all. I think it's such a great idea. It saves so much time, it's free, and if you don't have the setup, why buy expensive tools when you can just do it for free at the hardware store? But what we did notice is because we're working with such a heavy, thick blade at the hardware store, the wood got ripped up, and you can see that in the finish of the wood, the final product. We were able to disguise it by strategically placing those parts of the boards at the back or up at the top where you wouldn't see it. But if you do want a nice smooth cut without these jagged pieces, we recommend using a finer blade to cut the plywood. Okay, so as you can see, Steven's fitting in the finished pieces. We've decided to leave the pieces unstained, unpainted, and just have that natural wood look. Of course, you can do staining, you can paint them. If you're going to paint your shelves, you can definitely do it when they're already in the space, especially if the paint color is going to be the same as the wall colors. For staining, you're definitely going to want to remove the shelves first, as that's a much messier project. Okay, well, we hoped you enjoyed our video. If you have any questions about this project or any other project, you can definitely reach out to us in the comments or send me a message on Facebook. If you're interested in a little bonus footage, stay tuned to the end of this video. So the other night when I was driving home from work, I came across a, believe it or not, wild turkey. So where I work is on the outskirts of a really big city. It is more suburbs, but there's not like a huge forest or farmers' fields or anything like that here. There's a little small forest. I would never expect to see a wild turkey here. So I found this really exciting, and I hope you enjoyed this too. Bye!